Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. We were able to catch up with independent journalist Dack Rouleau to talk more about what's going on with Julian Assange. Here's the video. I hope you like it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Convo Couch. My name is Pasta Jardula, and we are here in New Hampshire with a special guest. I've been trying to track this man down. You might know him well, independent journalist. His name is Dack Rouleau. He was Rouleau. Say it again.
Rouleau.
Dack, what are you doing here in New Hampshire?
We're here tonight for the Tulsi Gabbard Town Hall in Concord. This is her penultimate town hall. The last one will be coming up tomorrow night, and then one night after that, it's the New Hampshire primary.
You live in New Hampshire. You can vote here. Who are you voting for?
Tulsi Gabbard's the obvious choice, just because she's the only candidate who's come out in defense of Julian Assange, the only candidate who's a serious critic of the military-industrial complex, the only candidate who's willing to take action on things that she has direct unilateral control over, and that's why she's the only one who's trustworthy on any of these issues.
That's great. Okay, let me ask you a question here. A lot of people say, okay, Dack Rouleau, the Action for Assange people, they're just like a one-issue type of independent news source. I mean, why are they so obsessed with this and stuff? Why is this so important to them? I mean, why don't you give a little example or a little unpacking of why this issue is so important to you when it comes to Julian Assange?
Well, just like Tulsi Gabbard has the ability to unilaterally drop the charges against Julian Assange, last April when Julian Assange was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, the Trump administration unilaterally repealed the First Amendment. What people don't understand is that when Assange was dragged out of that embassy, it now became established precedent for the United States government to charge people who have published information that the government doesn't like. It doesn't mean that you're going to be convicted necessarily, but now the government can arrest you, put you in solitary confinement indefinitely, make sure that you do not have proper access to people who might be able to rally support behind you. This is now a precedent that has been set, even if the charges against Assange are dropped tomorrow.
But what about those people who say, no, Assange pushed Chelsea Manning to give him information. He actually wanted her to commit a crime. He pushed her to commit a crime, and she committed a crime by doing so, and he helped her out. Therefore, he can be tried under the Espionage Act.
It's completely irrelevant. A person who pushes somebody else to acquire information is not abetting a crime. This was something that was established through the case of the Pentagon Papers. Daniel Ellsberg made sure he fought like hell to avoid prosecution on that specific issue, or conviction rather. And so if Julian Assange is going to be held accountable for that same imaginary, illusory offense of encouraging somebody to collect information that is troubling to the United States government, then anybody who wants to get the truth about what our government is doing is going to be liable and vulnerable to the same malicious persecution.
It's like the target's on both of us now, right? Where anybody's up for grabs right now. They do it to Julian, they can do it to us. All right, let's talk about his extradition coming up, his trial. Do you want him to come here, or do you want him to stay there? I mean, what are the pros and cons of him coming over here as opposed to staying in England?
Well, the editor of WikiLeaks, I believe, recently said that if Assange is extradited to, quote, that devil's island, meaning the United States, then his life is lost.
Yeah.
I don't want him here at all. I don't want him to stand trial over this. I want the charges dropped immediately. But when the United States government pays $10 billion to purchase a human being in an extra-legal form of human trafficking, obviously the government is going to get that for which it has paid.
Yeah.
And so the charges need to be dropped. The case needs to be dismissed immediately. If he's sent over here, he's going to face such a hellish new definition of agony in the United States that there will be no hope for him at all.
So you say if he comes here, it's all over?
Yes, and as far as the what is at stake with the First Amendment, as I said earlier, the outcome of the legal case is irrelevant. The Trump administration has already set a precedent whereby anybody can at least be charged for publishing information that the United States government disapproves of. So I have no interest in him coming here and winning the case. I just want the case to be dismissed immediately before any more harm is inflicted.
So when you said to purchase him a human being, what do you mean by $10 million?
$10 billion.
$10 billion. Okay, so Donald Trump wrote a check, said, give me a Julian Assange for $10 billion, or did they do it some other nefarious way?
This was a process through the IMF. This is similar to the Ecuadorian government was given officially $4 billion in a loan through the IMF, and then an additional $6 billion in various incentives. This is similar to what we see with the impeachment controversy. It all stems from Joe Biden pressuring the Ukrainian government to drop their chief prosecutor, and in exchange for doing so, Ukraine received a $1 billion loan through the IMF. the United States has the ability to pull the purse strings in a way that would make the Godfather envious, and so this is how it's done, is through these official means, but through a kind of international bullying of the monetary system.
It's always about the IMF. It's always about our monetary system control everything. So what are your hopes when it comes up? What is it, the end of February? Is it coming up very soon? Or when is the trial? And more than anything, what can be done? What courses of action need to take place for him to not be extradited?
Well, the first part of the extradition hearing was within a few weeks. At the end of February, I will be down in D.C. with various members of the Free Assange community protesting that. Others will be in London protesting his extradition. And then a subsequent hearing, the second moiety, will occur several weeks thereafter. What people need to do is they need to demand from their representatives that this case be dismissed, that Assange not be extradited to the United States, and the American government essentially eat that $10 billion investment. That's why I've gone up to all of the Democrat presidential candidates, with the exceptions of Joe Biden and Michael Bloomberg, and asked them where they stand on this issue. Their answers have been extremely unsatisfying hitherto, and it proved that they do not deviate from the Trump administration in any meaningful ideological capacity.
What's the end game for the Trump team when it comes to Julian Assange? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they just trying to silence other independent journalists out there to tell them, hey, man, don't you dare step out of line or we'll get you too?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, the Trump administration has already accomplished its main goal, which is establishing a precedent whereby people can be at least charged with some fictitious violation of publishing laws, privacy laws, secrecy laws, etc. That's already been accomplished. But what they want is for people who are investigating the government and acquiring information that is not obtained by the corporate media, the New York Times, Washington Post, and other gatekeeping affiliates of the establishment. They want independent journalists to recognize that their ability to procure and collate and publish meaningful information on what our government is doing behind closed doors, that right be revoked irrevocably. Yeah. They don't want people to have that ability, and so that is what they've already accomplished the most important part of the task by dragging Assange out of the embassy and throwing him in prison. The only question is how deeply are they going to cement this new precedent through his conviction.
Mike Gravel is giving you an answer you like. Tulsi Gabbard said on Joe Rogan that she would completely pardon Julian Assange. I look at your answer. I tried to get Buttigieg yesterday. You talked to Buttigieg about it themselves. His answer is, I think, what expected. No answer from me. The bullshit answer to you. I'm really curious about your answer from Bernie Sanders, because a lot of people kind of point to that one. I don't think it was too off kilter. He seemed to be a little upset when he was kind of pointing at you, and he says a little bit more deeper than just a on-surface question when it comes to Julian Assange. Do you think we're still capable of moving Bernie Sanders to where he needs to be moved to when it comes to Julian Assange?
Well, first of all, just let me say that Tulsi Gabbard didn't say she would pardon Julian Assange. She said she would drop the charges. She said she would pardon Edward Snowden, because Edward Snowden did commit a crime in defense of the American people and in the public service, which is why the charges should be dropped. I mean, he should be pardoned, but Julian Assange committed no crime, therefore the charges should be dropped immediately. But as for Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders does have an extensive history of supporting aggressive imperialism when the Democrats are in charge. When the Republicans are in charge, he is generally dovish, but when the Democrats are running the show, he becomes more of a hawk. He's made very critical remarks about the Venezuelan government, which is another imperialist project undertaken with great enthusiasm by the Trump administration, following with the work of Obama, certain to be followed up on by the Buttigieg administration. So with Bernie Sanders, Mike Gravel told me that he can be trusted on this issue to instruct his Department of Justice to drop these charges against Julian Assange. Mike Gravel has obviously been researching these issues for much longer than my parents have even been alive, so I think that his opinion should be respected, but at the same time, I guess I don't share his enthusiasm or his optimism, but I would not, if it comes down to Bernie versus Trump, I obviously can't I can't fault people for voting for Bernie if that's what they think will be in Assange's best interests.
Okay, so what about Glenn Greenwald lately? You heard about that stuff, and Bernie seems to be on the right side of that issue.
Well, he is, but he also is able to criticize a foreign government in that situation without recognizing our own government's disturbing actions. It's obviously fair game to criticize any foreign government that you want, and the Brazilian government, obviously only an extremely right-wing ideologue, authoritarian, would want to defend that administration. But again, it raises questions. What is Bernie Sanders as president going to do about it? How is he going to compel the Brazilian government to drop the charges against Greenwald? It's not very convincing. It seems like it's a lot of puffery and posturing on Bernie's part without him ever being required to deliver the goods.
Dak, I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I think you've been doing some amazing work. I think you're a really smart guy. The way you articulate your questions, I'm just really excited to be considered. What's the name of, what are they calling us again?
They're calling us Ohana.
Ohana,
yes.
Which means what?
Family. That's the family of journalists who are not going to be cowed on these issues.
Well, hey man, I watch your show a lot. I watch your YouTube channel. Please go out and check out Dack Rouleau. Why can't I ever say his name right? Dack Rouleau over here, independent media, always hanging out with the Assange people. Dak, thank you so much, and good luck on Tuesday, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.